Hey, this is going to be a requested video for Hercules 1, and what he asked me to talk about is Vampire the Masquerade Camarilla. And Camarilla really is the framework for the game. Now, there are certain deflected cretins out there. I'm going to name names. Bland Humanoid, Alikov, haters of the Camarilla. Well, I'm going to put you pieces of trash in your just place, just the way you always should be. Now, that being said, the Camarilla provide an excellent game. The big difference is a Camarilla game is substantially harder to run. Part of the problem why a lot of people are haters of the Camarilla is because they play in shitty Camarilla games because the game master can't handle it well. If you talk to your game master and he says something like, I don't do politics well, Camarilla game is not for you. And if that's what he's running, don't bother playing because it will be the drizzling shits. I have seen game masters actually say that. In fact, the game Vampire really isn't for you. The political side of the game, really through the whole run of World of Darkness. I don't know New World of Darkness well enough to say definitively that's the case, but the impression I've got is there's still a large vestige of that, however, probably not to the same level is the old style. I think it's more lighter, which is overall generally what I found in the New World of Darkness. But back on topic, the Camarilla is more difficult to run because it is not a party game. You are not playing that style. And it's about you very similar. You play a party style game. You have the Valkyrie to have your reason to put you all together, and you damn well need to be together because you need the eyes in the back of your head because you're facing the most powerful organization in Canite history. They are the authority of the vampire world, and that being said, the other vampires, regardless of how much they want to say, oh, we control this or that or whatever, they know where the power lies, and it lies in the hands of the Camarilla. The power of an Archon, of a Justicar, of a prince, of a prominent city, or even a country is tremendous. Now, these individuals have a tremendous amount of other elders and such around them, and when you start to build that and create that political intrigue with all the jackals waiting for, you know, that big lion to fall to see where they can pull themselves up, because you see when you come into it, it's sort of like, think of it being in a business world, and you come in and you start on the bottom rung as an intern, but no one else above you ever retires, ever. So how do you get any higher? Well, you have to take from them. Maybe you do that by arranging their dying. I mean, you will pick a few bones up here and there. Someone gets blood hunted. Something happens. And if you remember, in a Camarilla game, you should start off, you should have a long period of time. I mean, you may even start in the Dark Ages or even before that. Start off with them being mortals at those times and run through them. They should not be bam, 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 because a Camarilla city does not have tremendous amount of action. There aren't firefights in the streets, people dying, Sabbat running in. These things do not happen on a nightly or weekly or monthly or yearly basis. It's a long creep because vampires are meticulous, manipulative, methodical planners. They make sure that all their moves are with precision so that they can make it to those final nights, because that is, after all, their goal. What good is immortality if you are left for the sun or staked and thrown into a block of concrete or one of the other millions of horrors there are now in the Camarilla? It's very focused on the prince of a city in the game. That is going to be your big focus, but you also have the Primogen. You're going to have the focus of these elders that your typical game, say you're starting in a modern knight, you're playing a neonate, your neonate has to begin to create a position, because while you can say, oh, well, I don't want to be involved with politics. Well, the problem is you already are, because you're a vampire, and whether you want to be or not, you're going to be pulled in. You know, it's like being part of the mob and saying, oh, no, I want to go off and do this instead of have assignments. Well, you certainly have your downtime and have a chance to attend to your agendas, but your sire and other vampires of your clan, or not of your clan, are going to begin to have an interest in you, because you are but another tool, as is every vampire in the city. A quite interesting, useful, sharp tool, like a knife. And, well, there are plenty of other vampires that need another piece of cutlery for their silverware chest. So they're going to make their inroads into acquiring you one way or another. So you need to begin to stack up and rack up those favors. And boons are a very important part of vampire society. Now you say, well, what is a boon? Why is that important? A boon is all about respect. Now you need me, so you owe me. You owe me a favor. You see, again, we go back to talking about being a lot like organized crime, and it really is a lot like organized crime, and that's another way to really think about it. Think about mafia or other gangs, but particularly gangs with style. I'm not talking about the real kind of Buster Hood rat type gangs, although there are some parallels there, particularly with bourgeois and such, but that kind of falls more on towards the Savant and Anarch side. But if you have that sort of analogy, looking at having the pyramid now coming in your typical style game, like I said, I think it's best to start way in the back and just run slowly. And a vampire game I think should last for years. I played a game last almost 5 years, and spanned over 400 years, and saw from being a human to being a ghoul to finally being a vampire, and to slowly acquire more and more power. And there, what you want to do again is acquire those power bases. Now, all of them are taken, unless there comes along a new form of power base. With the large boom of computers and the way that changed up the world over the last 20 years, there are some differences created. But traditionally, you're looking at transportation as being very important. If you're on water, docks, airports, train tracks, taxi cabs, you can look at having anything that's going to give you influence. Anything that makes bodies disappear is a definite power base, a definite influence. If you have crematoriums, that is going to garner you favor. Remember, it goes back to Boons. You have a venturer who just spazzed out and drank down that precious nectar of that teenage girl that he has to drink, and he's, oh, I've killed her. I don't know how to dispose of a body. Well, you come to the guy with the crematorium, and now you owe him a boon, perhaps major, perhaps minor, depending on how well you can deal. And that, again, comes back to the politics, the wheeling and the dealing. And while someone might be able to lean on you and push you, they still want something from you, and they may well take something that's small as opposed to not having anything at all. And that really comes down to testing the role-playing side of it. How much do you get fucked? In Vampire, in the Camarilla, you get fucked, and you get fucked a lot. But you might be able to, through good role-playing, minimize that. And there are also those opportunities to put other people in your in your sway. Now, see, what you have to remember is, and I've talked to some people like Alikov about this, while you might want to go handle your own stuff and not be bothered, the world of Kindred do not operate inside of a vacuum. Where they operate is inside of this fishbowl, and there's often too many fish, too large fish. You have too many inches of fish per aquarium gallon. If you're an aquarium aficionado, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But what I mean is, there are going to be those overlaps where people are seeing you and they're saying, we need to do something with him. And all eyes are going to be on you. All eyes are upon everyone, because the parasites and vampires, Kindred, regardless of how well they want to dress themselves up, they are parasites. They are hunters. They are users, and they will use each other. And it's a grand pleasure because they want to have that power. So it's a game where you have to understand that coming in. And one of the problems, again, that makes coteries a bad idea is the players should not necessarily be against each other any more than against others. And they may well have a natural reason to come together, but kind of throwing everyone together, you're not playing Dungeons & Dragons. If you want to play Dungeons & Dragons, play Dungeons & Dragons. It's a very far removed game from that party mentality, from we watch each other's back and take care of each other. No, in Vampire the Masquerade, in the Camarilla, you do not do that. You are out for number one, and that is you. You need to have those political chips acquiring those boons, so then when something bad happens to you, you may not meet the sun. You may be able to wriggle your way out of a situation where finally, the sword of Damocles is hanging over your head, but you're able to roll it away because you have that favor. You have something that's important, something that you are needed for, and perhaps that sin can be overlooked, admitted, pleaded down a bit. Remember, the prince is the Elder and has the right to call a Bloodhunt, which means he can kill essentially anyone at any time, as long as he can. As long as there's not going to be too many problems with killing you, as long as there's not going to be too bad of a situation. So you don't want to put yourself in that kind of situation. You don't want to have that tide wash over you. You want to be useful. Because if you're not, why were you even blood in the first place? And that question will come up and be quite well examined. One of the bastions of the Camarilla are the Tremere, which in themselves can probably provide one of the best, most logical reasons to have a coterie. If all of your vampires are Tremere and are together, you have a good reason to have a coterie. One of the big problems is Tremere are, in terms of Camarilla, the absolute worst vampire to integrate into any other form of coterie if you are determined to use that model of game, because Tremere are almost, really almost like automatons. They are going to report back to their elders. They're going to report everything you did, everything you said, and that can, in many ways, be almost a non-issue in a straight Tremere game. But you, of course, have that jockeying for power and such. The way I like to handle the game is minimum. Usually I like to have 3, maybe pushing it 4 players. Not any more than that. A Camarilla game needs to be low on players so they can have high on time, lots of individual stuff. And then you have meeting grounds like Elysiums, which are the sacred space of the kindred, where they come without open conflict. Of course, there's a great deal of lower conflict. Often discipline use is highly frowned upon, but you know, you can do anything as long as you have those chips and aren't caught. And so that's always important too. So that is really how you play the game. Make sure you understand where the power points are, where the points of interest are, who has the power bases, and when you come in if you come in and doing it as a neonate, you have to figure out the power structure, the bureaucracy of the undead, and figure out how to pull yourself up from the mailroom, how to acquire a better job, how to acquire more prestige. And you might have to work very, very hard to do this, but it creates, in here, you go, oh, that's a lot of work. But what it does is it creates so many interesting and fascinating positions for role-playing, so many wonderful opportunities to role-play in a very different fashion than many games permit, because the aspect of the politics in there, the backstabbing, the conniving, the deceit, the hunger and lust for that power really elevates an additional level. Now, when you take that and couple it with having personal interest for the character, with having an attempt, with attempting to maintain your humanity, and there's another point about the Camarilla, because at their heart, they are attempting to have that heart, to touch back to their humanity, to not fall to the beast, to say, yes, we are human, we were human, have risen above it, but we still have to keep those vestiges of humanity inside ourselves. And if we do not, we will be damned to the beast, to the curse of Cain, to a curse of God himself. And we do not want to fall in the darkness like that, to be slavering, ravenous beast. That is not the fate we want. We want to be elevated, to ascend, to have something better for ourselves. And even there, you can play those humanity stories. You can play stories for Golconda, for redemption. That's what that's about, redemption. Finding inner peace, finding an ability to have that tranquility inside a state where you are a cold monster that every great once in a while becomes ravenously hot, but to find a balance. You do not lose yourself, you do not lose control, and you may touch with something perhaps even pure inside yourself once again. And saying that you do have so much time, particularly if you run the game, as I'm saying, over small increments. Maybe we play a few sessions for the hot spots, what's going on in 1971. We bring it up to 1973. Again, a few sessions hitting it, and then there's recaps, explanations, and then you can even go into emails and such. Okay, well, I did this, this, and this while it wasn't really going on. I'm trying to get my positions up, because a Camarilla game feels very, very cheesy. If you're like, hey, it's 1992, all right, it's 2 months later, and now the prince. I've seen games that are quite that bad, and that I've played in them, but I have, and it's quite the booty. So you don't want to have that. You want to have things mean something. You want to have it pop off. You want to have the character slowly work, slowly climb, gruelingly. And one of the best ways to do that and not make it take 18 years of actual play is to have large periods of time elapse with lots of bullet points hit on them. I know that could be a bit disjointing and jarring of a style for someone until they get used to that, not having that complete control of it. But sort of look at it like this. Say you're playing in a game and your character is a little above the initial base point, and so you have to have a bit more background for them. It's kind of like that, but then you've already played part of that background. You jump it up, you come back and go, okay, I'm delineating exactly what I'm going to be doing, what I have done, depending on how you want to look at that, and then you can proceed, and you can continue to proceed to your building up. You're getting that additional power, and really, again, that is what it's all about, attempting to make yourself indispensable to the people who are important. Sometimes you have to humble yourself, and it brings you great opportunities to sell. And I know I talk about selling all the time because I see it horribly done so much in games. And I just played a horrible game recently, and there was no selling of any kind. So again, I see that. So I like to bring it back and to get people to thinking. Those opportunities, you can kind of put yourself down and really sell for that prince. Those elders, how powerful they are. But maybe one day with the right planning. And remember, as a game master, you have to make sure that web is very tight, very carefully taken care of. You want to have all the relationships done before you ever have the players brought in. Have all the rest of the vampires in your city made. Don't make like 3 of them and have them poorly sketched out. Your politics won't be there. Politics are really all about power and the relationships between people. So when you have those relationships, and remember, player A, NPC A, might love NPC B. NPC B might be aware of that and exploit and manipulate that love out of this NPC, but secretly also might love that NPC as well. Just to give you an idea that you want to make it to a degree complex, complicated, have mishmash of emotions. And remember, in Vampire, where you have vampires that drink each other's blood, the blood bond is a really compelling way to have that. And even if you only had that one drop, you might be like, I fucking hate him. Why do I keep thinking about him? Why is he always running through my head? Always thinking. Because that blood is coming back. And if you watch True Blood, that's really a kind of a great thing that they show in there, not necessarily for the vampires, but for the vampires to the humans, to their ghouls. But the same way it's going to apply for the vampires under the blood bond. That kind of dream that, now, I'm having that connection there. So that's really, what you want to do. Have your political web set up, have your city established, have your power bases understood, have the players put in a position where they see that they have to really pull themselves up and make those relationships and understand that they have a sire. Perhaps that'll be the beginning of the relationship, the doors opening, and make Vampire hard. The Camarilla should never ever be a cakewalk. The players' wins should be very minimal. It should be scraping by. This is a game for people that want to have very bizarre interpersonal relationships with others, to have a character that experiences a very interesting unlife that is heavily rich in role-playing. It really demands a vast amount of selling, because if you try to, bully badass the wrong person in a game like Vampire, it could be very, very bad for you. And by bad, I mean the sun. So keep that in mind at all times, please.